It was supposed to be just a quick stop. I came home to grab a jacket I'd left in the living room. Nothing more. Mom was still at the hospital, pulling another late shift. But Claire was there, and the way she looked at me made it impossible to leave. The sun was beginning to set, bleeding gold across the living room rug. Everything was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that presses in, makes every move feel deliberate. Claire sat on the far side of the couch, one leg tucked under the other, a half-full glass of wine in her hand. She looked like she'd been sitting there for a while, like she was waiting. She turned her head when I stepped in. "Oh," she said, soft smile. "Didn't expect you back yet." I mumbled something about the jacket, trying not to stare, but she looked different. Not in a drastic way, just more relaxed. Her dark hair was pulled back in a loose bun, a few strands falling near her face. The buttons on her silk blouse were slightly undone. Bare feet. No glasses. That part surprised me. Claire always wore her glasses. "Your mom's still stuck at the hospital," she added, swirling the wine in her glass. "Told me to hang out here and wait. You don't mind?" I shook my head, stepping around the coffee table, eyes locked on the jacket draped over the arm of the couch. But as I reached for it, she scooted over, just enough to make space beside her. "You in a rush?" she asked. I hesitated. Claire tapped the empty glass beside her on the table. I was about to pour another. "You want one?" I laughed nervously. "I don't think I should." "That's not a no." She smiled, stood up slowly, and crossed the room to the kitchen. I sat. I shouldn't have, but I did. When she came back, she handed me the wine without asking again. Then she settled beside me, closer than before. The couch wasn't small, but she didn't leave much distance. Our arms weren't touching, but they might as well have been. I could feel the warmth from her skin. She raised her glass and said, "To random reunions." We clinked. I took a sip. She didn't. Her eyes lingered on me. Quiet, measured. Not unfriendly, but not casual either. The silence stretched too long. I turned slightly, confused by the weight in her stare. "You've grown up," she said at last, voice low. I swallowed, unsure how to respond. Then she added, "I probably shouldn't say that." She looked away, smiling to herself, and took a sip. A thump from outside broke the moment, a car door slamming. I flinched, glanced at the window. She chuckled. "Still jumpy," she teased. "I just wasn't expecting." I trailed off. She leaned back on the couch, stretching out her legs. "You always used to be so nervous around me." "That was years ago." "Was it?" Her tone was teasing, but her gaze wasn't. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Still in ER. Claire has the keys. If you're tired, crash at home. I'll be late." I felt Claire lean just enough to glance at my screen. She didn't ask permission. "So it's just us," she said quietly. There it was. I stood, suddenly unsure of what to do with my hands. "I should probably head back. I've got class early." She raised an eyebrow. "It's barely past 7. "I know, I just—" Another knock. Sharp, 2 taps. Claire got up and opened the door without hesitation. It was a neighbor from upstairs, holding a small brown box. "Package was left for you again," he said. She smiled politely. "Thank you, Dan. My friend's son is visiting. He'll carry it up for me." Dan looked at me. Something in his expression lingered. Then he left without another word. Claire closed the door, locked it. When she turned back, her expression had changed. Softer, or heavier, couldn't tell. She walked slowly back to the couch, picked up her wine, and didn't sit down. I stepped toward the hallway, jacket in hand. "I should probably—" Her voice stopped me cold. If you walk away now, she said, gaze steady, you'll always wonder. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And I didn't leave. The lights in the kitchen were different. Dimmer. Softer. Claire had only turned on the undercabinet lamps, leaving the ceiling light off. It gave the room a warm, amber glow, like it was hiding something. She stood by the counter, boiling water in the quiet. I leaned against the fridge, unsure if I should speak. The space between us wasn't large, but it felt like a canyon. One she wasn't afraid to cross. You didn't leave, she said, not turning around. I know. I thought you would. I didn't reply. Steam started rising from the kettle. Claire reached into a drawer and pulled out 2 mugs. Her blouse had shifted slightly. A glimpse of her shoulder showed through the soft fabric. She caught me looking. Didn't hide it. You still take tea with sugar? She asked. You remember that? I remember more than you think. She handed me a mug and finally met my eyes. No smile this time, just that same quiet watchfulness. The same weight I'd felt in the living room. We sat at the small table near the window, only inches apart. Outside, the last light was fading. The city beyond the glass was blurred, distant traffic, the buzz of neon signs, a world we weren't part of anymore. Claire took a sip, then set her mug down gently. You've changed, she said. So have you. A faint smile returned. I hope so. A few moments passed in silence. I traced the edge of my mug with my finger. Claire's gaze dropped to my hands, then slowly drifted back to my face. I used to wonder what kind of man you'd turn into, she said. I looked up, and I asked, I'm still figuring it out. Her voice was even, careful, but her foot brushed mine under the table. Slowly, deliberately, and didn't move away. I didn't pull back. A flicker of sound, voices in the hallway upstairs. Someone moving. It snapped the moment for a second. I leaned back just slightly, instinctively. She tilted her head. You're afraid of being seen? I'm not sure what this is. You're not. Her eyes locked onto mine again. The kettle clicked off in the background. She didn't move to get it. Then she leaned forward on the table, chin resting on her palm. Don't lie, she said softly. I've seen the way you look at me. I swallowed. My hands felt warm, the mug too hot suddenly. Claire stood, slow and smooth, and walked past me toward the hallway. Something fell from her chair. A long, thin object, silky and deep blue. A scarf. She didn't pick it up. I leaned over, grabbed it by instinct, and held it up. You dropped this, I said. She stopped, looked over her shoulder. Did I? Her voice was barely a whisper. She stepped back toward me, took the scarf from my hand, but let her fingers wrap around mine for a moment too long. She looked at me with something unreadable. A door slammed upstairs. Someone coming down. Claire straightened instantly, pulled her hand back. Her expression shifted. Cool, neutral, unbothered. She stepped into the hall as the sound got closer. A second later, a man's voice, the neighbor from above, called out "Night" from the stairwell window, just passing by. She waited a beat, then turned back toward me. Don't worry, she said. No one saw anything. I tried to laugh, failed. We returned to the kitchen, but it wasn't the same anymore. We sat again. She placed the scarf on the table, folding it neatly. Your mom used to wear one like this, she said suddenly. I raised an eyebrow. She smiled faintly. She never noticed when I borrowed things. I didn't know what to say to that. Then Claire's phone buzzed on the table. A message preview lit up. Lisa, leaving now. 30 to 40 minutes. My mom. Claire tapped the screen and put the phone face down. She'll be home soon, I said quietly. Claire nodded. I know. Neither of us moved. Then she leaned in again, closer this time, and said low, there's always tomorrow. What happens tomorrow? She didn't answer, just looked at me and added, noon. I'll be here alone. She stood, took the mugs, rinsed them at the sink like nothing happened. I sat still at the table, staring at the scarf she'd left behind, folded perfectly, waiting. I shouldn't have gone back. That's what I told myself while standing outside the door the next day. I could have ignored her whisper, pretended it didn't happen. But at 11:59 a.m., I was on the porch, palms sweating, scarf folded in my pocket like a secret I couldn't name. The house was quiet when I let myself in. Mom was still at the hospital. Claire was in the kitchen, back to me, pouring coffee. She didn't jump when she heard the door. She just said, I wondered if you'd actually show. I forgot my charger, I muttered. Right? She smiled at the sink, not turning around. The living room looked different in daylight, sharper edges, less forgiving. No golden glow this time, just white light cutting across the couch. I set my bag down slowly, the scarf heavy in my pocket. Claire turned at last, holding a mug. She was barefoot again, hair loose, wearing a light robe over a tank top and leggings. She looked more like herself, but also less like the version I'd known all these years. You look nervous, she said. I shouldn't be here. Then why are you? I didn't have an answer. She came closer, handed me the coffee, brushed my hand with hers. You didn't forget anything, she said quietly. You wanted to see me. Her words landed like a weight between us. I took a sip, staring at the floor. Then she stepped closer, voice lower now. I saw how you looked at me last night. I froze. I liked it, she added. The kitchen clock ticked too loud. My heart was louder. I didn't look up, afraid of what I'd see. Claire tilted her head, trying to catch my eyes. Say something. I swallowed hard. This is... I stopped myself. We shouldn't. Shouldn't what? Her tone was soft, but her stare was steady. Footsteps outside the window. A man's voice, faint. My pulse spiked. Claire moved to the curtain and peeked out, then let it fall closed again. Relax, she said. Just the mailman. But the sound broke the moment. My grip on the mug tightened. I could leave now. Pretend none of this was real. That was my out. Or I could stay. I looked at Claire. She was still at the curtain, her profile turned toward me, hair falling forward. And in that instant I knew I wasn't going anywhere. I stood and stepped toward her. She didn't move. You're making a choice, she whispered. Yeah, I said. Finally, I looked her in the eyes. She didn't blink. Slowly, carefully. She reached up and brushed a stray bit of hair from my forehead. The first time she'd touched me that wasn't by accident. The smallest gesture, but it felt like a confession. Her other hand slipped into her robe pocket and came out holding the blue scarf. She unfolded it, draped it loosely around my wrist, tying a simple knot. You keep holding on to this like it's a secret, she murmured. Maybe it's not one anymore. I stared at the knot, at her fingers lingering on my skin. The scarf felt different now, not something hidden, but something claimed. Then the sound of keys at the front door. A metallic scrape. Someone trying the lock. Claire moved fast. She untied the scarf, stuffed it back into her pocket, and pushed me gently toward the hallway. Bathroom, she hissed. Go. I ducked into the hall, heart hammering. The door opened, but it was only a delivery guy dropping a bag on the floor. No one came inside. The door shut again. Silence. I stepped back into the kitchen. Claire exhaled, steadying herself against the counter. You see, she said softly. We're always a breath away from being caught. I nodded, still shaken. She reached into her pocket again, pulled out the scarf, now folded around something. She pressed it into my hand. "Tomorrow," she said quietly. "After dark. Bring this." I opened my mouth to ask what she meant, but she was already moving away, picking up her mug, her back turned. I looked down. The scarf was heavier now. Inside, tucked into the folds, was a small key. The key sat in my desk drawer all day. I didn't touch it, didn't even open the scarf it was wrapped in. But I kept checking to make sure it was still there, like part of me didn't trust it to stay. I skipped a group project meeting that afternoon, lied to my friends, ignored 3 calls. When my mom asked if I was coming to dinner with her and Claire that evening, I told her I had a headache. She offered to bring me soup. I told her not to bother. I didn't want to see Claire with her. Not like that. I turned off my phone and left it face down. The silence was easier than excuses. At night, the apartment felt smaller than usual. The walls closer. My laptop screen glowed too bright in the dark. I couldn't focus. I kept replaying everything. Claire's voice, the way she touched my forehead, the way her fingers tied that scarf like it meant something. I opened the drawer, unfolded the scarf, held the key in my palm. It was simple brass worn around the teeth, probably old, probably belonged to the back door. She never said what it opened, but she didn't have to. At exactly 9:43 p.m., she sent a message. I hadn't realized my laptop was still synced to my texts. "If you're still thinking about it, the side entrance doesn't creak like the front. Tomorrow, after 10. That was it. No emojis, no pressure, just a fact. My chest tightened. I closed the laptop, laid the scarf over the key, and pushed the drawer shut. The next day was heavier than it should have been. At lunch, my mom mentioned that Claire had been quieter lately, that she'd been helping less with the fundraiser, that she seemed off. "She told me she's thinking of leaving town," Mom said. "Did she say anything to you?" I shook my head. Lied again. Mom looked at me strangely, held her gaze longer than usual, like she saw something. I forced a smile, changed the subject. That evening, as I walked past the living room, I saw a sliver of Claire through the half-open blinds across the street. She was sitting on the edge of the couch, staring at the floor. She didn't move for a long time. 10 o'clock came like a drumbeat. I didn't bring anything, just the scarf in my pocket and the key in my hand. I crossed the street without thinking, heart pounding. Every window felt like an eye. The side entrance was darker than I remembered. I slid the key into the lock, turned silently. The door opened with a soft push. Inside, the house was warm, quiet, dimly lit by a single lamp in the hallway. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me. Claire was already waiting in the living room, standing this time, arms crossed. She didn't smile. "I thought you might change your mind," she said. "I almost did. I would have understood." A beat passed. I took a step closer. "I lied to my mom today," I said. "Twice." Claire's mouth moved slightly, not quite a smile. "I lied to her yesterday," she said. "And the day before that." She turned away, walking slowly toward the kitchen. I followed. "She thinks I have it all together," Claire continued, reaching for a bottle of wine. "She always has." She poured 2 glasses. Didn't ask if I wanted one, just handed it over. "But the truth is," she said, "I don't sleep well. I drink too much. I haven't been touched in over a year." She said it flatly, not looking for pity, just naming it. "My divorce was quiet," she added. "That's the problem with quiet things. No one notices when they break." She sipped her wine. "I didn't expect to feel anything when I saw you again. And I definitely didn't expect you to look at me like that. I set my glass down. Couldn't drink it. But you did, she said. Yeah, I whispered. I did. Outside, a car engine started. Someone pulling away from the curb. We both went still. Waited. Then, from upstairs, the sound of footsteps. Heavy. Too heavy to be the neighbor. Someone inside. Claire's head turned sharply toward the ceiling. Did you lock the side door? She asked. Yes. We moved quietly toward the stairs. But before we reached them, the footsteps stopped. Then started again, lighter this time. Then a voice. Claire. My heart froze. She looked at me. It's her. Who? Your mom. Before I could speak, Claire grabbed my wrist and pulled me into the hallway. Basement, she whispered. Now. She shoved open the narrow basement door and pushed me inside. I nearly tripped on the first step. She didn't follow, just closed the door softly behind me. Dark. Dusty. I crouched low, barely breathing. Above me, I heard voices. Claire's and my mother's. Words muffled. Calm. Friendly. I sat in the dark, surrounded by the cold hum of the water heater and old boxes, holding the scarf in my hand like a lifeline. 22 minutes passed. I counted every second. Then the door creaked open. Claire stood at the top of the steps. She's gone. I came up slowly. Claire looked exhausted. She forgot her umbrella. Thought she'd left it here. You covered. I always do. She walked back to the living room and sank onto the couch. I followed. She looked at me carefully. A beat passed. Do you still want to come back? She asked. I didn't hesitate. Yes. She nodded slowly. Then she said, Saturday. Late. Everyone'll be gone. She reached forward, took the scarf from my hands, and wrapped it loosely around my wrist. The knot this time more intentional, tighter. Next time, she said, I won't untie it. Saturday came quietly, like it didn't want to be noticed. I left the house late, said I was meeting friends. Mom barely looked up from her laptop. Don't stay out too long, she called after me. I promised I wouldn't. I lied. Claire's house was dark from the outside. No lights on, no movement behind the curtains. But I knew she was there, waiting. I used the side entrance again. Same key, same scarf in my pocket, same silence on the other side of the door, thick, charged, familiar. The hallway light was on this time. Dim, golden. The kind that doesn't light up a room so much as soften the edges. She was in the living room, sitting on the couch in the same spot where all this had started. Barefoot, hair loose, wearing a dark wrap dress that tied at the waist. Her legs were crossed, her arms resting lightly on the cushions. But her posture was tense, like she'd been holding her breath since I stepped inside. You came, she said, almost too quietly to hear. I nodded. Neither of us moved for a few seconds. Then she patted the spot next to her. Come here. I did. We sat without speaking. The only sound was the hum of the fridge from the kitchen and the faint wind outside. For a moment, it didn't feel like anything would happen. For a moment, it felt like it already had. Then she turned her head toward me. Why are you really here? She asked. I could have said I didn't know. Could have given her space to walk away. But I didn't. Because I wanted to be, I said. Claire's eyes searched mine. Then she nodded slowly, as if that answer had been waiting to exist. She reached forward and took my hand. No words, just that, her fingers curling over mine, holding. Warm. Still. Then, without breaking eye contact, she said, Take off the scarf. I pulled it from my pocket, slowly, unfolded it. It still smelled faintly like her perfume. I held it up, unsure what she meant. She turned her back to me slightly, lifted her hair with one hand, exposing her neck. "Wrap it," she said. I moved forward, gently draping the scarf around her neck, tying it loosely in the front. My fingers brushed her skin. She exhaled slowly but didn't speak. When I was done, she turned to face me again, eyes darker now. Then she leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't rushed, wasn't hesitant either, just real, quiet and full of everything we'd never said aloud. And that was the moment. No thunder, no crash, just skin and breath and a decision made in silence. That was the point of no return. Later, we sat on the couch again, legs tangled, lamp casting soft shadows on the wall, her head on my shoulder, my hand on the scarf. "We'll never be able to explain this," I said. "We're not going to try," she replied. "We'll have to hide." "I've hidden more for less," she said. "This, I'd do again." 1 week later, things returned to normal. Almost. Mom never asked why I stayed home more. Never questioned why I stopped going out at night. Claire didn't visit the house during the day anymore. Her name didn't come up much. But on Thursdays late, always after dark, I'd get a message. A time. A door. A single word. Come. And I always did. Now there's a new ritual. A quiet one. Every time I leave her place, she ties the scarf around my wrist again. Not too tight, not too loose. Just enough to feel like a memory. Promise. And when I get home, I untie it slowly, fold it into my drawer and close it softly, like closing a chapter no one else is allowed to read. The scarf stayed warm for hours after, like her hand had never left it.